A lot of people struggle with writing and they get into this business. And again, that was an advantage I had. I could just write. So being in front of crowds, writing, being extemporaneous, all of these are axes that I had sharpened long before I knew what tree to cut down.
Jason, we can drop a beat right now and see what
Please
happens.
do not.
We've heard you speak so many times, but never with a beat in the background. In fact, that's probably something we should ask the Driven Mastermind to put together. Like he's gonna come up for his presentation, but instead of his slides, can we get some rap? I mean, is there anything on YouTube, anything we can see where you're rapping, especially?
I will not show you. It is out there. Occasionally somebody finds it. But I try not to have it be known.
Well, we're gonna have to look
Jason,
up, yeah, figure out your stage name. We're gonna find it. Someone will.
how did you, we talked about it a bit before, but guys, Jason's not just talking about rap like he's rapping for fun. Like Jason really knows his shit when it comes to hip hop. I consider myself a connoisseur, even from lyrics to cadence to this, that, and the other. And Jason can go one to one with me. So where did this, I know, but from what you want to share, where did this deep love of rap and hip hop come from?
Yeah, a couple things. So first of all, my brain just moves so fast. I learned when I was like 35 that I had ADHD, and I was like, oh wow, that's useful to know. I never knew that before. So normal music didn't move fast enough for me. I always liked hip hop because there was so many words, and I would just get into the words. I could relate somewhat culturally to hip hop because, I grew up in an environment where drugs were a thing and people sold drugs and people did drugs. And there was, I was a white kid from Iowa and there was only two black kids in my school, Chris, and they were literally from Africa. They were foreign exchange students. So it wasn't like we had this cultural diversity there. But yet at the same time, there was no other music that was talking about, selling drugs and was talking about what that was like and that experience growing up in that. So for me, as close as I could relate to that, hip hop was the only one that made me realize that. And my only experience with cops guys was when they were doing things to people that I loved that I didn't really appreciate. As far as I could tell, the cops were as crooked as the criminals were, at least in my personal experience growing up. So, like, you hear hip hop music, you hear F the Police by NWA, and you're like, yeah, that tracks. To me, like, I'm white boy from Iowa. I'm like, I understand that. And also at the same time, like, it was so cool and it was such a different experience than everything that was out there. And I've always been a contrarian. So I have never followed the normal path ever in my life. So you start checking all those boxes, ticking them off. It makes sense. But yeah, I'm an old head in the game of hip hop. I don't know much of the newer stuff, a little bit of it, but yeah, it was the first music that I ever really liked.
And then really quick, the thing that I've noticed too, is you said with hip hop, the challenge is, they're dropping these lyrics and these 16s and it's happening so fast that it's hard to appreciate what that individual said. Yet I notice if you go, let's go back to the webinars. In your webinars, you can make it happen fast, but then you could still slow it down even by just one word per slide so they can understand what you say. And so how did you transition from just bob 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 to still having a good pace but making sure that the crowd can keep up with what you're putting down?
Yeah, well, that one was hard because I would be fast paced, which is not a bad strategy when you're communicating because if people find what you say interesting and they struggle to keep up, they will stay attuned. They will listen. When you get better at it, you find that varying tonality, delivering, pacing, all of those things are valuable, and confidence comes from the person that speaks really slow. So there's some sort of status and authority when you slow down your speech. But there's always levels to this. So you learn one thing and it works good. And you say, now that I mastered this thing, what can I build on top of it? So then you learn the next thing. Guys, it shocked me when I realized that most people don't even pay attention to the lyrics of any song. They just like the beat and it's background noise for them. So
Yep.
they don't care about hip hop because they don't even listen to the lyrics. I was always into the word, so that also works for webinars, because webinars for me is such a precision of what language and wording we're going to use. So I started emphasizing and just focusing on the words and then picked up the delivery along the way. But I mean, it's the same thing. Like when we wrapped, it's like there's so many flows that you could come up with. I mean, at one point in time, there wasn't that triplet flow that then became all the rage in hip hop. That was a new flow that broke onto the scene. But you would experiment with different flows when you would rap, and you'd be like, damn, if I did it like this, I could do it, then this is how it hits. If I do it like this, then it hits this way. And I always thought that was really cool. Like a Bone Thugs and Harmony flow when it came out. It was like,
Yeah.
what is this? You never even heard it before. And it was just devastating. And I grew up in the Midwest, guys, so there was no Midwest hip hop scene. So I would be like, East Coast, awesome. West Coast, sure. Down South, yeah, why not? I didn't have any loyalty to any region because none of the stuff come out of my region. So I got to hear all the different flows from all the different places, and we would just experiment and play with them and see what we could come up with. So again, that translates into marketing in a way that I think, is unique for me. But I remember, Dimitri, you and I were on a boat in Mexico.
Yeah, yes, we were.
That's a funny way to start a conversation. Yeah, but we were at the Driven getaway in Tulum there, and you and I were talking, and I was saying to you how on the hierarchy of what matters, like the specific words you use are way down the list. Like you got to have the story, you got to have the emotion that you want to have hit for the audience. And then once you nail that, then you can add in the next layer and the next layer and the next layer. So like delivery and all that kind of stuff, that is secondary. Like first you got to have something worth saying. That is more important than how you say it. But then once you have something worth saying, then how you say it becomes very important.
And that goes back to the offer. The offer has to be good. And I want to come back to how to actually pick a good offer. I mean, you mentioned there has to be advantages. I want to figure out those advantages. But first, all the stuff that you just mentioned remind me of that song, Hook by Blues Traveler. You guys know that one? It goes, it doesn't matter what I
Oh
say, so
yeah.
long as I sing with inflection. And I was like, that's so true. It doesn't matter what the lyrics are, and it doesn't matter what your presentation is. The other thing is like West Coast, East Coast rap and stuff. Well, I'm gonna say there's a West Coast, East Coast marketing style. I'm gonna represent the East Coast coming from DC right now. So,
Oh
um,
yeah.
and by the way, I mean the Midwest in the '90s, at least when I was coming up, there was the St. Louis scene. Maybe that was too late.
Yeah, yeah,
Nelly and
And
right,
Nelly and those guys, yeah.
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 Chingy.
So that Chingy, yeah, some
Yeah.
quality stuff
Chingy.
coming out there.
He was more of a
The
drive-by.
Holiday Inn.
Yeah, he was, but he was there. Yeah, he was there
Yeah, he
for a
was
little
there.
bit.
Okay, so back to advantages, because okay, in theory, yes, we want to have the advantage, and that's where we want to play our game. But I mean, how do we actually find it? How do we identify it? You know how you identify yours, but how does somebody figure that out?
Yep, that's a good question. So, I mean, at the highest level, supply and demand dictate everything. So the more something is in demand and the less supply of it there is, the higher the value for it. So then that means the easier it is to sell, the more you can charge, the more money you can make, the bigger the potential there, depending on market size, all that kind of stuff. So you want to be able to have this uh, the ideal position in any business is one, meaning you're number one. So number one in a market controls the market. Pretty much number two has to dictate their strategy based on what number one won't do. So, Coca-Cola owns the market, and so Pepsi never can compete head on with Coke. It will always lose. Apple owns the market for tablets, iPads. So you can't do what Apple does. And you just run down the line in these mature markets, as we call them. Number one sets the tone for the market. They typically take up 60 to 80% of the profits in that market. Number two has to be counter number one, be the opposite of number one, essentially. So their strategy is dictated by number one. And then number three through whatever,
Mm.
they don't really exist long term. So what you want to do is you want to be number one in a market. And the easiest way to be number one in a market is to create a new market inside of an existing market that you can own.